think we've always been interested in architecture in a way beyond its own limits. We have a deep interest in society, with society in the city, in urbanity. We have a deep interest in the global condition, in what has happened to the world over the past 20-25 years as economies merged, spaces collapsed, essentially became closer and closer. And also our own work, our own architecture suddenly confronted ourselves with a series of different environments, culturally, in terms of climate, to both understand, on one hand, analyze, but also speculate on what new possibilities could be in those global environments, in those global contexts, but also in the very specific places where we build, in the concrete cultures, if you like, that our projects are embedded in, I think is something we care about very much. The challenge was how to rethink the issue of community and how to possibly profit from the really extraordinary potential that this site offered us. And the site itself is located as part of a huge green belt that goes through Singapore, that is one of the most intensely natural tropical conditions that Singapore has. So the proximity to this, rather than only to the city itself, so its position between city and urbanity and nature, I think became one of our driving ideas, if you like, one of the entry points of how to position and place the project. One of Singapore's most intense green belts is right adjacent to it. And this presence of green became a really important lead into the design of the project, as we wanted to integrate the buildings with the natural environment. The power of nature in this part of the world and the beauty of nature in this part of the world is almost overwhelming. And I think architecture should work with that, not against it. Through the horizontal stacking of the building volumes, we have a series of horizontal surfaces, big terraces on top of the building blocks. All of them become green gardens, lush terraces for the residents, partly communal, partly private. And if you start to add up the 8-hectare site, the ground itself, plus all these different terraces, you realize that suddenly you have 112% green, actually a lot more green than if you would have not built on the site. The Interlace is really about interlacing, interconnecting the entire development into a single whole. While it brings all the different building blocks together, it also very clearly separates each individual unit from the other. Each unit has clear views and, in a way, a maximum distance to any other building block. If we would have developed the site with a more standard typology of vertical towers, they would have ended up very close, maybe 30-40 meters apart. Through the arrangement of the hexagonal stacking that we used for the blocks, we were able to almost double the distance. So units are now no longer directly facing each other, but are at about 70 meters distance, vertically offset from each other. So each piece has sufficient individuality, sufficient privacy. thinking about the characteristics of a village, it's much more of a communal texture. It is where people share things, where they're together, where there is not simply a sense of individuality and segregation, but ultimately a sense of togetherness. And I wanted to think if we could recreate some of these qualities, but obviously project them into our contemporary society, where we do need individuality, where we do care about privacy. So how to construct a village that would both be communal yet individual, that would be in a certain sense public yet extremely private at the same time. And I think those were the leading thoughts into this project. If you live at the Interlace, you could say you live in a particular courtyard. Actually, both orientation and I think identity is not provided primarily by the building, but actually by the spaces in between, by the hexagonal courtyards through which you circulate, through which you enter the development, and through which, if you like, you go home. Each one of the courtyards of the development has its own very specific characteristics. There's a central courtyard, which is literally the center of it all, where you come in, where very quickly from entering the development you will find yourself from where basically you distribute into the surrounding courtyards and into the residences. Next to that courtyard, which maybe performs a more public function within the development, you have, for example, a theater plaza, where we have both indoors and outdoors theater facilities for performances, for really activities of the inhabitants. There are a huge amount of water features, a series of pools, an Olympic-sized swimming pool, kids' pool, jacuzzis, family pools. But even water features that typically are rather small decorative elements in a development, at this scale here become lakes. We have basically a water feature which is the size of a small lake, essentially 50 meters in diameter. So those elements really illustrate how extremely generous and large things are, and how much space there will be available for the community of the inhabitants to share and enjoy.